Okay, welcome back, depending on how we edit this, to part two. All right, well, then get right to it. You know, one subject I want to get to is the word alcoholic, which you said yesterday. I guess you said you refer to yourself. You know, the way I've come to define it, because a lot of us don't like to be referred to it that way. Yet we have no problem referring to our parents or our grandparents, almost in a negative light. Oh, my father, and I think you said yes, my father is an alcoholic. I'll say, yeah, my grandparents were alcoholics, but then we don't like it. And we being a lot of people within the sober communities, I don't really care, although I do think it has a very negative connotation. I kind of prefer that I have alcohol use disorder, but there's no shortened version. I'm determined to come up with a better shortened version of that. But anyway, I define it: if you're not doing the work, essentially you're an alcoholic. But if you're doing the work, if you're taking responsibility, you're just sober. You're just trying to get sober, or you've got the alcohol use disorder. But so it's kind of a way I look at it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, that's a great topic, and it's one that has grown so. And this isn't to offend anybody else or you, Capmaster, but it's one that's grown very unimportant to me. From my personal journey, you just nailed it. That term alcoholic has been around since, I mean, probably forever, but I know 20s, 30s. When the big book was written and AA and all that. And you're right. I do think it has a pretty negative connotation in the world in which we live today. I will tell you and tell anybody out there, because, I see these posts that are like, what does an alcoholic look like? And the answer is oftentimes exactly like us. There's a lot of people that are successful. And I just did a post today, as a matter of fact, about looking good on the outside. The job, kind of well kept, the family, the kids, the cars, the vacations, where the inside's just a complete mess. So for this guy, I'll identify with just about anything. I think I'm an alcoholic, but that's because to me, alcoholic just means I've got faulty wiring when it comes to addictive substances. My substance of choice was booze. So would I behave in the same manner with something else? Maybe. I don't know, because I was never really interested in something else. I was a drinker. I like drinking. I've drank my whole life. So I definitely don't take offense at the term alcoholic, because I think I identify with that. My alcohol intake is broken. My valves, my wiring, it doesn't work like a normal drinker. So that term's fine with me. I do like alcohol use disorder, because I think it is a disorder. People that don't understand, say you're weak, or your willpower, or you just got to make better decisions. And none of that is true. Once we have the decision to not drink, but once that decision is crossed, there really isn't any control. It might end up fine. It might end 3 days later in another state, So alcohol use disorder, I tell people sometimes when I'm describing it and don't really want to use any of those words, I just tell people, say, yeah, my off switch is broken. I've got faulty wiring, and I always have, because I always have. So any and all the above are okay with me, but I do think that alcoholism and an alcoholic has a bit of a stigma, that a lot of people that just aren't informed on what we really deal with and what the real problems are would think in a negative connotation. So I probably don't use that word often to describe myself, but I don't hesitate to tell people, yeah, I don't drink. Drinking's not for me. I've got bad wiring.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's an interesting one. And even when I say, I don't know if that's perfect, because we're taking responsibility. So we shouldn't be given the negative connotation, but those who haven't or aren't, it's not necessarily their fault either, because I did a recent YouTube about a colleague that died from drinking, and to me, just never got the right help, possibly never found the right community. I didn't know him that well. He worked for the same company, but it was a buddy of mine's, good friends with him. So, and he's in a different state, so I don't know exactly how. I wish I knew him better and could have helped him, but for all I know, he did try going to AA meetings, and it just wasn't a place for him, and then never learned about online communities. I mentioned yesterday, I'm on a Facebook group. People post on there, what are the alternatives to AA? And it's amazing, some of the answers, mainly books and different stuff. No one's ever mentioned Reframe or the Luckiest Club, TLC, the one that I'm in. So Reframe you're in, and I used to be in, then TLC. So people still don't really know about these things. And you mentioned they found you, I think, through an ad, because you were, drunk scrolling or whatever. I only found out from my friend Amy. So it's a lot of people that just don't find the right help to get sober, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, and to put in to sort of finish up that topic, those people that you mentioned, they would say the ones still suffering if you're in the rooms of AA, but there's a lot of people that aren't going to identify with any of those terms because you have to get to a point where you're ready to admit that you even have a faulty off switch, or you're hiding from reality, or you're masking, or you're pouring liquid onto your anxiety or depression, whatever it is, whatever the underlying problems are. There's a lot of people that won't identify with any of those words because they don't think that it's them. So
Right.
it's all about timing and how far down you want to ride that elevator before you're willing to get off. Knock on wood. I I feel lucky enough that I got off before I hit the ground floor, so I didn't lose everything, which alcohol will take, and it would have taken away from
Yeah.
me. So there's a lot of people that don't want to hear any of those terms because they're just not there. They don't want to look inward because it's hard. I'm not taking away from them. It only took me 35 years, so who am I to
Yeah.
say anything?
Yeah. And, I'm thinking my buddy Matt recently told me he listens to all my recordings, mainly so he can critique them. And he said, you got to just decide on one term. You're always calling it something different:
Mm-hmm.
disease, disorder, alcoholism. And, I'm thinking there's a guy, Andy G, on Reframe that said, the word is what you make of it. And it's probably true. We almost need to take it back. I might even just start saying, let's just call it alcoholism. Just don't think of the negative connotation. That's in the past. Now, way more people are getting help and taking responsibility. If you're taking responsibility, it's not a negative term. If you know that it's something you need to take responsibility for and you're not, maybe that's a different story. So, yeah, I guess it's a whiny question. And addiction to me is almost, or to me, is a misnomer. To me, an addiction, anyone can get addicted to an addictive substance, right? An addiction to me is just an ingrained habit. I now have an addiction to eating chocolate after dinner every night. I didn't forever. I used to just eat dinner, brush my teeth, floss. Once I floss, I like to floss, but I hate to do it twice. So once I floss, I won't eat another thing. But now I'm triggered to eat chocolate. It's become an addiction. It's become an association. I finish my meal, I eat some kind of chocolate. Thanks, Mom. But I can beat that in a minute. And possibly never eat it again for life. But a disorder to me is a higher level. And that's what we have. That involves having that voice, which is the neural pathway that we built up for all these years that thinks alcohol is the answer to everything. And no matter how long we go sober, that never goes away. To me, that's what defines the disorder, or this is a chronic brain disease. And that is the difference. Typically, if you don't use a neural pathway, it shrivels up and dies and wilts and goes away. In our case, it wilts, but it never goes away. So you could pick up 20 years from now and you'll end up right back in the same place. And sadly, I know a guy I grew up with that did that. He literally, I don't know the exact, but I think in the neighborhood 20 something years. And he's now basically needs a new liver, sadly. And that's crazy. So that is why this is more than an addiction. It really is a addiction disorder. Maybe that's the term. So I'm going to be working on all this nomenclature through the years here. But all right, moving on. And then coffee. That's my new addiction I talked about, previously. So where do you use coffee? Would you say I use it as a crutch? Even before this podcast, I was kind of hoping you were going to cancel today. You opened up saying, in drinking age, you never finished anything, and knew we were going to finish it, but I gave you out again, just like yesterday. I said, if you need one more day, and I said the same thing today and was almost hoping you took me up on it. And then when you did, I'm like, oh boy, I got to start pounding coffee just to get me prepared. But it doesn't do a thing. But do you use it like that?
I don't really. And for anybody that's kind enough to be watching us right now, I will share, because what you just said is really important. It's not on the topic you just asked for, and I said I wouldn't do this today, so forgive me, but I'm doing it anyway.
Hey, just
The well, so I spent a lifetime. My drinking was escape, mostly drinking. Like when I was young, drinking was fun, and it made problems feel like they weren't problems, and that just continued throughout my entire life. And it gets worse for me, it got worse as I got older, and it was just complete escapism drinking. But one of the results are there's so many results that were negative from that, but one of them was just accountability. I didn't want accountability on anything from anybody. I rarely started things that I said I would start, and almost never finished, just because I was always playing catch up from being partying, not doing anything, then feeling like crap multiple days sometimes, and then in the in between binge days, I was catching up on life, on everything. There was no time for anything else. So when you get, like you just said, you gave me that possible out because I had some distraction earlier today. But I was like, no, I need to be accountable. We have to finish what we said we're going to finish. And the longer I put it off, the more likely it's going to be harder for me to get back to. I was not like that before I quit drinking. So that's just one of the like huge things that I'm happy about for my own growth is I'm actually doing things for myself and I'm becoming accountable in so many areas. I want to grow into the person that is, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And drinking took that away from me for a lot of years. I have great excuses. I looked good from the outside, but I want to be accountable. So you're helping hold me to the fire. And look at us both. We were both like, oh well, we could take one more day. We could get other things done. Da da da. But here we are. So I'm proud of us for that.
Yeah.
I don't really have a transfer addiction. Is what I've heard it
Oh,
called,
right.
like going to coffee or going to whatever. My opinion on things like that is literally whatever it takes to keep alcohol out of my mouth. So if it means I feel frisky and want to feel a little bit of a rush in my day and a cup of coffee accomplishes that, go for it. If it means at night I eat a half a bag of cookies before bed, which I try not to do, but that's okay. Like, especially early in sobriety, like I am, whatever it takes, man. This kind of leads into the topic of non-alcoholic beverages. I don't know if you want to, I'm sorry, NA like beers and things like that is what I meant to say. But I don't know if that's something that you plan to cover or want to cover, but it's kind of along this same vein because you mentioned something yesterday about people kind of get addicted in that sense and they drink a bunch of those. If I'm in a situation in public, my drinking was largely social, at least for the outside, for what I wanted people to see. But when you were in social situations that allowed lots of drinking, man, I mean, I pounded. That was like free reign. Nobody's watching me. I can drink as much as I want. I still find myself in situations like that. Like I went to Nashville recently for a weekend with my beautiful wife to celebrate an old friend's birthday and was with a small group that were all people that enjoy drinking, whether they are, they're on their own journeys. I'm not to say whether they have drinking issues or no drinking issues. That doesn't matter at all. But when we were out in downtown Nashville and the people that I was with, we were bar hopping from music to music to bar to bar to music to music. Everywhere we stopped, I got NA beers. Every single place. I don't know how many, 6, 7, 8, 9, but I drank those beers probably pretty similar to the way I would have drank in the old days because that's what it took in that situation to keep me from having cravings for the real stuff. And I know that's really controversial, and I hope that doesn't trigger anybody because a lot of people just don't want the taste. They don't want to see it. They don't want to smell it. I surrendered to alcohol. I don't want to drink alcohol, but if I'm in situations where I still feel the past creeping in, like I'm supposed to drink, and all of a sudden I get this, that feeling, right? I have no problem with NA beers, and I'll drink them all
Mm.
day long if that's what it takes to keep real alcohol out of my mouth.
Yeah. Agreed. I did that at my pizza shop, man. I would sometimes catch myself pounding them and then be like, what are you doing? This is not doing anything for you. I mean, sort of like the coffee, which is already half calf. I even make some iced coffee that's like 20% caffeinated. I don't need any of the caffeine, but it seems like such a waste with a decaf. So same thing. I'm like, why am I pounding this NA beer, especially if I paid handsomely for it in a bar? So I'll slow myself down. But yeah, but it doesn't matter. In the end, if I chug 3, 4 of them, um, and it doesn't trigger me at all. And I read a study that it didn't trigger mice. Apparently they give mice NA beers and it didn't trigger a relapse in them as well. But I know some people, so I don't think it's a chemical reason that it triggers people to potentially drink for real again, but it's the same behavior, I guess. And certainly it smells the same. I mean, I say NA beers taste just like a regular beer without the annoying buzz.
It's all
That's,
of, I say it's all of the flavor with none of the DUIs.
yeah, boom. Exactly. I mean,
But yeah, and I'm
that,
not advocating that. I have become self-aware enough, Kat, that I do recognize when I'm in those situations and I'm, drinking them probably more than really makes any sense at all. At least I recognize that I'm still showing behaviors that live in the kind of addictive spectrum. Like slamming NA beers still isn't what I long to be in the long run of my life, and I don't think that I will. But I still stand by what I said. If that's what it takes to keep real alcohol out, and I'm firm in my decision, just for me, then I'm okay with that. But I do recognize it's still not necessarily the most healthy behavior, right? It's still showing kind of addictive tendencies to slam anything, to overdo anything. But for right now, I don't care. So I'm not
Yeah.
drinking alcohol, and if that's what does it for now, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Grace, right?
ABB, man. Anything but booze. Anything but booze. And maybe Coke, but I've never even tried that for fear of enjoying it too much. And yeah, it's funny. I had a date over to my house because she didn't speak English, so I've had a few of those where you use translate, and it was sometimes it goes really well. This was deathly boring. It was so awful, and the meal was taking forever. And I must have slammed 3 or 4 NA beers just for no apparent reason other than passing the time. But who cares? Yeah, who cares, man? And back to what I was saying about the annoying buzz. I'm at that point now. Again, I'm at 10 and a half months going on infinity. Feel like I was back when I had 3.5 years. I saw the Dylan movie recently, and they were basically doing shots, or a guy was drinking right out of like a handle of vodka. And I cringed. I actually cringed at the thought of actually drinking it. And I shared on that on a sobriety call the next day. It got misty. Just the thought that that's where I was, that I now cringe at the thought. And vodka was my thing and doing shots. But I'd like to say I'm hooked on a clear mind. Yeah, same thing. Beer just wasn't efficient enough. I don't know about you. I would chug wine, but never beer. And I like beer. It's the only alcohol actually I really like. And I never drank it because it wasn't efficient enough, too filling. Yeah, were you similar?
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up a beer drinker. I didn't like liquor as a young drinker. It was an evolution
Same.
for me. It evolved for some of what you said, like when things got to that point that I was chasing the bigger buzz, the one that I'll use the term that alcoholics never actually catch because we black out or pass out trying to get to the level that we think we need, which doesn't exist. So that's part of the disorder. But yeah, I evolved into the liquor. I don't want to say a lot of it because that's not fair. A good clip of it was my drinking crew, the guys that I came up with, my golf buddies and my drinking buddies. They all evolved from beer, which is where we all started, into the mixed drinks and the bourbons and, the vodkas and whatever. So I kind of went along for the ride. But then once I discovered that was the quicker path from A to B, A to Z, whatever saying you want to use, that kind of became my thing too. And that's when it became dangerous for me. Like once I really embraced that, the vodka especially, I mean, I'm sure it's all terrible, but like you said, vodka became my jam. I don't know why, I don't really have a reason, but once that really took hold, that's when it became dangerous and bad for me. Like that was when I got to levels that really, even I had a hard time normalizing. And I was really good at normalizing my behavior and my drinking and comparing to others or hiding it or deflecting it. But even, vodka became a demon for me.
Damn. Oh, that's good. I was going to interrupt you before, and I was going to check my mic, and I hit mute by mistake. Would you go to wine as I would often do, and let's say that's it, only wine, beer or wine? But as I said, never drank the beer, and that would never last more than a week because the wine's so sweet, and I'd always end up back there, and that seems very common with our people.
Hey, I did every form of management that you've ever read or heard, and I really am not joking. Because I fought it, man. I fought hard. I'd had alcohol my whole life, and I was like, I cannot live without alcohol, so I'll only drink on certain days. I'll only drink certain things, only beer, only a glass of wine at dinner. I'll only drink what my wife drinks so that we stay on the same level. I'll only this, I'll only that. All bullshit. 100% all bullshit. I didn't mean it
Yep.
when I made those deals with myself. I might have thought like up here for a hot minute that I meant it, but go back here all the way to, I didn't mean that shit. I mean that stuff. Sorry. It was just all BS. It was all ways for me to protect my drinking and most likely mellow out whatever incident had happened because of my drinking, whatever trouble I'd caused, fight with my wife, passed out at a dinner table. I mean, whatever incident my dumbass drinking had caused, those agreements were ways to soften it so that time could pass and then I could drink again.
Yep.
So it was all BS. But yes, I've tried every single one of them. Every single one. None of them worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That voice does not take no for an answer, and that's
Well, and even if
what.
you for my level of alcohol use disorder, even if I meant those agreements, and maybe there were times where I kind of, like I said, I kind of did. I mean, I wanted to be better, but the devil that's back here has you. Alcohol had me. You can do what you say you're going to do and only have beer or only have wine, but once you've had a few of those, all bets are off. If everybody else starts doing shots, guess what I'm going to do? The shots. I might have said I'm only going to do this, but as soon as there were a few of those cocktails in my system, I didn't, no matter what I had said before, all bets were off.
Yeah, shots should be outlawed, man. I never want to be a sober snob. I don't know if that's a term and it's applicable, but like there was some sober people freaked out when Taylor Swift was pounding a drink at the Chiefs game early in the season. And no, that's inappropriate. She can do whatever she wants. Would it be nice if she didn't? Sure, but man, shots should be outlawed. I mean, the concept is crazy. That is not, I mean, for anyone, that just ruins a good buzz is basically one drink an hour, which is why we as alcoholics never have a good buzz. Nobody can really drink that slow, but especially not us. So the concept of a shot where you're doing that entire drink in 5 seconds is just crazy, and never mind the driver's aspect, whole nother discussion if we have time, but just the concept of a bar. That at least 50% of people in bars are drinking and driving, guaranteed, unless they're drinking one drink per hour, which is almost physically impossible. Again, I don't know if eventually I probably will get on that soapbox. I want to be on the Today Show someday talking about all kinds of issues like that, but even another one is having those breathalyzers on the ignition. It's not really feasible, but I now have dreams that imagine just if every car could have one. I mean, it would lead to too many problems, and you get your freedom people that would never allow it. I actually Googled, why isn't that a thing? And that's part of the reason, but it'd be kind of amazing, because everyone condemns drunk drivers, but most people have been there and especially, and many have been impacted, those have been impacted losing lives from it. But all right, segue. But great quote that I almost kind of usurped, great word, but I got from the same guy, Andy, I just referenced on Reframe. And you never know who's made up. It's so funny when you hear sober quotes and you think they made it up. A lot of people on TLC, again, my sober community, the Luckiest Club, will credit moderators, coaches. They'll say, oh, this coach had this awesome quote. And I'll have to spoil it in the chat and say, actually, that's a famous quote. Anyway, to my knowledge, Andy came up with this, and I think I've Googled it and it doesn't exist. Moderation only works for those who don't need to try to moderate. Got it? I mean, it's brilliant. Maybe better said, if you need to try to moderate, you can't moderate. It's got to just come naturally. I use the analogy of it's like sipping coffee, although I just ruined that because I do semi-pound coffee, but I can moderate my coffee drinking. Water might even be better. That's probably the only thing. Although I even got OCD with water because of my drinking, drink for drink. I actually joke drinking may extend my life because I drank so much water in my drinking days that may have actually done me more good than harm, although just like to tell myself that.
Well, I mean, water is key, man. Here in my recovery, I try to just drink water. And in truth, NA beers, I think, without the alcohol, really are not terrible because I think they hydrate you, but that's another topic too. Just an opinion on the comment that you made. That I think that's a great quote. Yeah. And here is a fact of my life and my drinking. The fact was moderation was hell, not just hard. It was hell. And I would do it sometimes for the sole purpose of showing someone that I could. Occasionally that someone was me. I'm only going to have a couple glasses of wine at dinner because that's all my wife will have. And I know I can do it. So I would do it. But if you identify with a drinking problem, then this will make sense to you. And if you don't, it will sound insane. And it is insane. But if I have a couple of drinks, the pull, the physical, it's in here somewhere. And it's a pull on me to continue drinking is horrible. It is work. Moderation is work. It's an uncomfortable feeling. All I can think about is, man, I'd like to have another drink. How long do I have to wait so it looks appropriate for me to have another drink? Like, it's work. It's all about work. So in my mind now, I can admit, and I think people should consider, if moderating is hard for you, I think that alone is a little bit of a sign that maybe you need to think about your drinking, because I know, and I go out with people, moderating's not hard. They can go out. This has always blown my mind. I did a post about this recently on a chalkboard. People can go, normal drinkers, and I have nothing against normal drinkers. I really don't have anything against drinkers, any kind of drinker. It's just I'm on my journey, period. But normal drinkers can go to lunch and have a glass of wine, maybe even two, and then their day stays a straight line. They continue with whatever was in their day's plan like normal. That blows me away, Kat, because put me in that situation.
Uh,
Take you and I, if we were drinking, or I shouldn't include you, but I think I can. Take me to a restaurant and give me a couple glasses of wine at lunch. Guess what I'm doing after lunch? You don't have to guess. There's no guessing. I will
yeah, oh
find
yeah.
another drink. Or if I had to stop, it would have been hell. It would have felt very, very bad inside because I don't want to
Hmm.
stop. But I wouldn't have. I would have found other acceptable ways to drink, gone back to work for a hot minute, found a friend that wanted to get off early, go to happy hour, whatever it took. If I start drinking in the middle of the day, that straight line that is normal people's days for me would go, gone. That's it. So
Yep.
if moderating is hard, like it was for me, that in itself might be something you need to think about.
Yep. Yep. I was going to say, you were the one talking to the people yesterday. I was thinking of doing this when I said that quote, just being like, if you're trying to moderate right now, come closer. Look at me in the eye. Moderation does not work. And it is torture, So I got a couple quick thoughts. One, you mentioned a quote I heard recently, the only choice is the first drink. From there, the compulsion kicks in. And really, I just spoke about how even the first drink is really not a choice. When you're in the throes of it, when you're being brainwashed by the voice, when you're in the throes, until you can break that cycle, even that, it's not a choice. I spoke about, sadly, the guy I mentioned that passed, the ex-colleague, what I would say to his 16-year-old daughter, she's now 18, about she probably thinks he chose alcohol over her, but it wasn't a choice. He didn't get the right help. He never broke the cycle. So for him, it was only ever a compulsion and not a choice. And I even read the definition of a compulsion, and I should pull up again, but it's almost a command. It is that voice in your head, which we all think of as just growing up from people, psycho killers. And I did say once on a call, and I thought it would freak some people out. And then a woman said it really helped her. So later that day, I happened to be on a call, and she said someone shared how that it's the same or very similar voice to the voice that compels people to kill. We're just very lucky it just compels us to drink. Though sadly, that can also lead to killing someone. But that's how strong it is. It's that strong. And it's that, again, it's the voice of the neural pathway. And I haven't learned from the neuroscience, and I have a YouTube on this. What it really is it's glutamate is the executive assistant to dopamine, and it records. Every time that alcohol worked for us, it recorded it. And it believes alcohol is the answer to everything. In any situation you're in that's stressful, trying, whatever, it will search through your files and it'll find a reason or find a time when it worked for you, and it will give you permission to drink. And once you have permission, willpower goes out the window. And that's why we're essentially powerless. So it's amazing when you really learn the science behind it. And I want to talk about that in regards to your golf trip in it soon. I want to get to actually your drinking history. But I do want to say, so Reframe, again, to recap, is the first sober community I joined. Tom's still on it. I switched over, but I still love Reframe. I mentioned yesterday it was a little clicky, what have you, but they were going through some tremendous growth. You mentioned people get thrown out of the chat now if they're judgmental at all and things. So it's a very welcoming community, as is TLC. But they have a cutback track so it's separate. They have a sobriety track, so calls for people just going cold turkey sober, and then for cutback, people just trying to cut back. But I always felt so bad for those people, although I think it's great. I said, when I was younger, living in Boston, that was probably the only way I could have started out. But I did feel so bad for those people that were torturing themselves trying to cut back. Because if you have the disorder, it's really not an option. You might pull it off, but only for a limited time. I like that saying, what made me go back after 3.5 years of sobriety was I thought I could try to drink normally. And I said, the good news was I could, the bad news, not for long. And we're talking like a week. And my buddy said, why were you able to do it? How could you do it at all? But it's, I don't know. I even tried Googling that. I think you're so grateful that you can drink with the people again, that you can. Actually, I know one of the reasons. I just spoke on this as well. Because I did 3.5 years of doing hard things sober, I strengthened my prefrontal cortex, which is what you need. That it's the midbrain where the voice lies. That's our survival mechanism, and prioritizes alcohol as number one, because we get such a huge dopamine hit, like 10 times more than any other activity gives us, that the brain prioritizes that. And it's in the midbrain. And the prefrontal cortex is what has to fight the midbrain, but it gets weakened over all the years of drinking. But I strengthened it up over all those years. And if you even quit for, say, a week, you're going to strengthen it as long as you do hard things sober, which is even just making it through the day. So you are able to kind of drink normally and have some willpower in those first few days or weeks, but then it all comes roaring back. That prefrontal cortex gives way, and it's as weak as it ever was, and that midbrain takes over, and you're right in the throes, and you're actually worse because it does progress for that reason. It's crazy.
I have an old friend. We've kind of reconnected, and he was in the sober communities and reaching out for help long before I was. We're the same age, but now he's done the flip flop, and he's gone back to it. He's remarried, and they like to drink wine together and whatever. And I mean, that's all great as long as it's working for him. But it does amaze me for somebody that's admitted to themselves that I just can't control this, and then they go back to that life. And to kind of comment a little bit on what you said about coming back to it, it is exactly what you said about how long can you make it before it falls apart again. And I think some people could probably come back and make it a long, long time, but the way that they do that is for whatever reason that they're not ready to just give it up completely, that makes them come back. They were sober for a while, and they know now that they have a problem. So remember how we talked about how hard it is to moderate, but you can do it, and you can do it for long periods of time. And I think that's what people do. They force themselves to moderate like hell because they think that they want this life for the social reason or whatever. So they, to partner with their spouse or whatever, to go to wine tour, whatever the reasons are, they think that it should be part of their life. I personally think that they just are going through hell. I think that they had sobriety and for whatever reason have gone back. I mean, unless maybe they just really were in a bad place in life and were drinking more from situational things. And that's certainly possible, that they weren't really as deep into an alcohol problem as I was. So maybe it was more situational, and then they've gotten some things straight, and now it's easier for them to moderate maybe. I mean, again, it's always somebody else's journey, not my own. But I agree. I don't know how people can come out and then go back and do okay with it. I choose to believe that they're moderating the living hell out of themselves, and that just has to be hard. It seems like that would be hard. It was a lot more work. It was an awful lot more work than just for me than just being sober. It was a lot more work.
Yeah. Yep. It reminds me of a good quote it's easier to stay sober than to get sober, which we often forget, but it's a whole another thing I could get into. But that's one of the things that's why I know I'll never drink again. A woman, great quote. She goes, why do I keep doing the hard part over and over? Which led to my quote that I would never want to do the hard part again. I mean, that is the hardest part. That first week, 2 weeks, 30 days, whatever, It's crazy. And, Ben Affleck, he's going to be my whale guest among a few others, Bradley Cooper. Affleck claims, and this will be my first question to him, be like, dude, you claim you moderated for 8 years. He claims that he just drank, say, wine at dinner. Yet he's one of us. And be like, dude, you must have had a lot of brutal nights. Maybe he did for the majority, but and all those people, even on the cutback calls, which I was in a lot of them, yeah, they were successful in their goals for some of the time, but a lot of the time they just blew right past those goals. And I bet he had a lot of brutal nights and weekends, because if you're one of us, it's near impossible to moderate, Yeah, it's crazy.
Crazy. I think that everybody's just so unique and specific and the journey is so unique to each individual person, maybe that did work for them. Like, I think that's why there's always been controversy over, is it a disease, is it a disorder, is it a this, is it a that? Because unlike other diseases that you might compare this to, those have very similar symptoms and results no matter who gets it. But this disease can affect different people it affects a lot of us very much the same way also, but maybe there's people out there that were just on, like I said, different levels, or they were drinking for other reasons than maybe I did from the true compulsion. Maybe they were trying to fix this problem or that problem, and they got away from alcohol and could fix some underlying problems, like the root causes, which most of us have. But then to add to that, there are those of us like me, I can speak at least for me, where I have bad wiring for alcohol. So I might have been covering other things up with it, but from day one, as a young drinker, I always drank like an alcoholic, always. So my whole life has been that. But maybe there's people out there that, just didn't have it to that degree, or their life was different. And maybe they can come back and moderate easier than maybe you and I could. So it's, it isn't my part to say. I just wish all of them, the best, no matter what level. Cutting back or getting rid of alcohol is never going to hurt anybody. One of my favorite sayings, Cap, is I didn't get in trouble every time I drank, but every time I got, wait a minute, is that right? I didn't get in trouble every time I drank, but every time I got in trouble, I was drinking.
Yeah.
So, getting rid of alcohol is never a bad thing for anyone. I don't care who you are, what your levels are, but for some of us, like me, it is necessary to live the fulfilling and beautiful life that I desire. And once I admitted that completely, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's a lot easier.
Right. Yeah. But I do believe anyone that truly has a disorder cannot moderate. It's that difference, as I said, between an addiction and a disorder. I could say I've got this chocolate addiction, but I know I can beat it any time. And then when I beat it, I could say, oh, look, I overcame it without doing any work or any help or any of that stuff. But that's because it's not a disorder. There's people with eating disorders. It's the same thing. All these people with no empathy for overweight people, a lot of people, I don't know, majority, it's a disorder. It's just like us. They have a voice that compels them to overeat despite the consequences. One thing I always wondered is, I'm so, vain about myself. If over drinking manifested the way overeating does, would I be more apt to quit? Because that's what everyone thinks. Oh, why, they're overweight. They should just cut back. It's not that easy, if not impossible for them, without getting help and doing the work. But I always wondered, if drinking made me 400 pounds, would I have quit sooner? Possibly. That's the other thing. That's a great point, Brian, my real name. It's so easy to hide drinking compared to overeating. Oh, wow. Right? So many people don't know the extent of our alcoholism, right? I'm sure you and everybody. Even my mother just said it to me recently. She's now hearing all my confessions, saying, wow, I had no idea you had such a struggle. I've had many people say that to me. And because it doesn't manifest the way that overeating does, which is interesting, right? For me, my face just got redder and redder and redder. I have a naturally red face from my Irish heritage, but it got to the point at my pizza shop, I'd have one sip almost, my face would become beet red. To the point customers would ask me, they'd be like, oh, you got a sunburn? Literally, I had a woman say, do you get a sunburn? And I already had my answer. I was like, I was actually out skiing today. It's just windburn. That'd be my winter answer. And then I guess I could say I had a sunburn in the summer, but anyway, now I'm catching myself talking too much. So, all right, let's get to you, but let's try to do it. When I hear other people's life story, they, like I said, if you don't know them, it's not quite as interesting. But gossip's gossip. So people like the good, juicy stuff. So yeah, I'll say, when I knew you from Reframe, I feel like you kind of went on and off. I loved when you shared, but I don't feel like you were that consistent. And for most of us, when we were in the throes of drinking, we wouldn't share that much. And then when we got sober, we'd share more, on and off. So yeah, and try to maybe answer in like 2-minute increments, and then maybe let me interject, and then we'll do 2 more minutes or whatever. So yeah. And you said you knew from the beginning you didn't process it normally. A lot of us, it takes time for that to kick in. So, all right, give me your first couple minutes on just, I don't know, when you knew you needed to quit, or if there's something prior to that you want to throw out there.
All right. We'll dive in just a little bit. I'll tell you my sober journey. So last year before last, I'm sorry, we just turned over a new year. So with the community of Reframe, I actually made it a little more than 7 months of continuous sobriety, which was far and away the longest I'd ever been sober ever in my entire adult life from like 15, 16. So I had some good success, but I'm also one that has to test the boundaries, man. I explained it like this in a meeting once. If you take two beautiful animals that are going to a zoo from the wild, right? Put them in this huge, beautiful enclosure with everything that they need. And to me, that was sobriety. You know, everything that I need is all right there. One of those animals is going to embrace it and say, this life is amazing. I've got everything that I need. But the other one's going to check every inch of the fence, right? I'm a fence checker. You know, alcohol has literally been a part of every aspect. I mean, almost literally every aspect of my life ever since a teenager. You know, in late teens and 20s, it was fun and wild and crazy and cool. Then in 30s, it was kind of normal, just what we always did. In 40s, I think it started to become a burden and a little bit more sad. And then as I got to 50, I had to face the fact that it had taken over. And I was more binge style, or was binge style. I didn't come home and have a cocktail to relax every day. I never, ever drank every day. I had periods of sobriety from 2 or 3 days to sometimes as much as even a couple weeks in my drinking life. But my issue was once the party started, never wanted it to stop. And, you know, when you're young, that made me cool. You know, I kind of grew up. Yeah, well, I don't even want to get necessarily into that, but I sort of raised myself with my group of friends, and that was our security. That's what we were good at. I wasn't an athlete. You know, I didn't get good grades. I barely got out of school, but that's what became what I was good at. And I embraced it like crazy and just ran with it. But so even from the start, when I would party, I would drink more than most of the people that I was with. And the ones that could hang with me are the other ones that likely have drinking problems. So it's just always been part of my life. Like I said, I made it 7 months last year or 2 years back. And then late summer and springtime, some trips came up. And, you know, I really liked sobriety, Cap. Like I really was happy. I was like, man, I finally found what I'm doing, but I couldn't quite get the key to unlock that room back here where that bastard sits. And I knew I had some trips coming up that were going to be really, really hard to not drink, like golf trips and vacation type stuff. So I told myself, tell me how messed up this is. I had a conversation with myself. I said, well, I love being sober and now I know how to do it. So I'll only drink on these trips, right? Remember, only beer, only wine, only this, that, the other. I'll only drink on these trips with the knowledge that I'm going to overdrink. I know it. I know I'm going to go off the deep end, but since I love sobriety, I'll come back to it and life will be okay. That was my last attempt at compartmentalizing drinking, and I needed that. So if you're watching this and you've got a million day ones, don't feel bad. Some people have to get all that experience before you get to the point of surrender, which I got to. I went on trips. I embarrassed myself. I had no fun. It was not about the people I was with or the thing I was doing. All I wanted to do was drink. And even in those moments, I was lying to myself still. That recently, after 7 months of sobriety, I was telling myself that, you know, this is fun. I'm cutting loose. I'm relaxing. I'm cutting loose. I'm escaping. And I wasn't doing anything but drinking. And I'll end with this for that part. When I tried to compartmentalize drinking like that, I drank more than I was drinking in the past because I knew I had this guy knew he had a limited window to pour in as much as possible before I would get back here and get on those meetings and quit again. So I drank more, and eventually I would have drank myself to death. So I tried that a few times. It never went well. I felt awful for days and days and days after those trips. I mean, horrible. And then I surrendered. I said, there's no way this is ever going to work for me ever. And that's how I got to where I am right now. I know I didn't go way back in the past, and we can hit the rewind button a couple more times, but that's where I landed. So that's what I've got.
No, I love it. I'm glad I think the way to do it. More recent, then we can back up if time permits. So that I'll give you my recollection, and I don't know that it was the 7 month thing, but because you're on what day now?
Like
122?
today is 115,
115.
continuous. So back to
Okay.
115 days. This is the second longest period of sobriety in my life, continuous, other than that
Oh,
7 months.
all right. And I know what started this, or what you had some kind of streak going before you broke it that led to this new 115 days. My recollection was you went on a golf weekend. Was that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's
But
exactly the
that
truth.
was a separate, how many days? That's when you even started posting on Instagram, and you had, how many days did you have going into that golf trip? Do you
Well, I
recall?
mean, there's a few because I had 7 months before the first vacation where I gave it all
Right.
up. And then I got back to sober and I'd make it 30 days and then give it up for the next vacation. Then I'd have 3 weeks sober and give it up for the next vacation. And then I got to the point where I was even trying to stay sober on these vacations. But the key is I wasn't really trying. I go the first couple days fighting against myself with the knowledge that, well, just get most of the way through it. Then you can drink some and you'll have less window of opportunity for damage. So I still hadn't given up, Kat. I still hadn't surrendered. I was still trying to manage it. Maybe not 100% consciously, because it's not like I had a written plan to do that. I might have thought, well,
Right.
I'm fighting it. I'm fighting the good fight. And then I was like, oh, I've lost the fight. I finally gave in. But I gave in because I never used the 3 words that I use now. I always said, quitting for a while. I'm not going to drink on this trip. I am doing this thing for my health. That always just leaves doors open, bro. For me, that left a door wide the hell open to walk back through if I wanted to. Now I tell people, no thanks. I don't drink. That's it.
Boom.
I read a post from who has now become a good friend, and she said, she was like, these 3 words changed my life. Not, I'm not drinking tonight, or I don't want to drink, or I'm trying not to drink, period. I don't drink. And that's all I say anymore. Nothing other than those 3 words. And it has completely changed my mindset. Completely.
Yeah, that's great. I've done a YouTube on identity, and just, yeah, changing your identity. That I'm a non-drinker. Take it off the table. It sounds so basic, but it's not. And it's really hard to do. And I mentioned the ABB, my accountability partner, and I made that up. But anything but booze, um, yeah, it's not in your life anymore. I first learned that I did the first, no, Smart Recovery, and they have different levels. And at the top level, the guy said, this basically, I wish I had him in front of me, but he said, at this level, drinking just doesn't exist in your life. And that for me was 10 years ago when I first gave it up to 3.5, but I never thought I could get there. But I'm absolutely there now. As a matter of fact, you know what song I like? I've been wanting to confess this, so here's a place to do it. That song, Tipsy, but I think it's Shabuzi. The guy's like, at the bar getting tipsy. It's all about just drinking and being at the bar getting tipsy, but it's a great, catchy song. I can listen to that completely without being triggered. In fact, I now pity drinkers. Someone once corrected me. They're like, you shouldn't pity anybody. And I said, all right, well, I don't envy drinkers. Let's just say that. But I do kind of pity them because we've learned to live life without it and to have fun without it. You mentioned that. I did not have fun for the last 6 years that after I started drinking again, really never had fun, especially drinking, right? Because we would just blow right through that good buzz. And then I love to call it, I know I coined this one, buzz limbo is how we spent the majority of our drinking days, just in buzz limbo. And that is not a fun place to be. And the only way to go after that is on autopilot. And that's where the really bad things happen. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't agree. I mean, it was work. I was never fully present, and not even, I mean, fully is a stretch. Most of the time I just wasn't really present at all. It didn't matter if we were going to dinner parties, holiday parties, golfing, concerts. I mean, you name it, fun stuff, man. I've lived a fun life. I loved my life. But when I was at those events, I didn't enjoy the people the way that I should have. I didn't enjoy the concert. I didn't enjoy the function. Everything was about the next drink. And that is my truth. I wasn't present. I wasn't living my life. I was drinking my life. So yeah, I agree. I like the way you phrased it, that you don't necessarily envy drinkers, because in early sobriety or in any of my other earlier attempts to quit, I did. I envied them. I was like, you motherfuckers, like you can drink normal and I can't. And I was envious, but that was because I hadn't given up. I hadn't understood that life really is better for me on the other side of that bottle. I got stuck for years and years thinking about quitting, and it felt punitive, man. I felt like I was being punished. I was losing out. Everybody else got to have fun. Tom can't have fun anymore because he can't handle his booze. I was
Yep.
stuck in that. I was envious. Why do you get to? And man, years of fights. My poor wife, love her to pieces. How many fights she must have had because well, you get to drink. You've gotten drunk. Why are you pointing the finger at me? I would deflect like crazy because I wasn't happy with myself, but I couldn't figure out how to not drink because I thought I needed it, man. I thought there was no fun life without it. And that's hard. It's a hard place to be, man. I don't envy anybody that's in that place. It took me 35 years to get to the point where I can have this conversation with you. I finally don't feel like it's punitive. And my drinking buddies still don't believe that. They're like, in Nashville, you okay? You all right with the, you okay with this? I know we're drinking. Is it bothering you? I can honest to God, Cap, looking at you, I can say, no, it doesn't. It doesn't bother me anymore. It isn't
Yeah.
punitive. I've figured out what's on the other side for me, and it's so free. I'm more free now. I used to use alcohol because I thought it made me free. I can escape. I can drive down to our family river house out in the middle of nowhere on the Chesapeake Bay where everybody drinks all the time, and that was escape because I was free. I was having fun. I wasn't free, man. I was trying to live escaping from the real life because adulting is scary. That isn't freedom at all because it's always worse when you come back. Now that I am sober, I walk through life and I'm present and I'm accountable and I'm experiencing a freedom that I swear to you, I didn't know existed, bro. I did not know that this
Yeah.
existed. And I feel better right now than I have felt in so long. I can't remember. And anybody listening, I'm not blowing smoke. I was a bad drinker. Identify with me. If you really drink badly, I'm your guy. Identify right here. My marriage is better. My relationship with my kids is better. I'm doing better at my job. I exercise every day. I wake up happy. I go to bed happy. My anxiety is gone. It's not punitive anymore for me. My life is freaking fantastic. Sorry. That was a
No, I
rant.
love it.
That
I'm
was a
just
rant.
taking
That was a rant. I'm sorry.
it. No, that was your best rant yet. That was fantastic. No, I loved it. I loved it. And that's a common thing people talk about freedom. This is freedom. 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 I think there's another song, Free to Be Me. I mean, there's so many songs. I play every song. I actually listen to song lyrics now because I'm looking for the sober linings in all of them, and there is in so many of them. And dude, what I just did, I never would have done in my drinking days with anxiety. Sober karaoke. I haven't officially done it, but I sing on sobriety calls every now and then. I sang a little bit yesterday and then gave you kudos for dancing along. I mean, that was sober exuberance right there. I sang, my mother tried to make me go to rehab. And you jumped right in doing the dance with me. I sing in the shower. I dance in the shower. I sing in my car. I mean, a great quote a guy had in my community. He's an older guy. He looks pretty mellow, but he said, I'm always having fun in sobriety. I may not always look at it on the outside, but I'm always having fun in the inside. And that's me, man. I mean, I used to have to listen to talk radio to drown out all the negative thoughts. Now I get to enjoy music. It's back in my life. And I say, I'm still listening to talk radio, but it's the thoughts in my head. And I quote that Pink song, A Million Dreams fill in my head. And you talked about that yesterday. I think I have the quote here if I can find, unfulfilled potential. I love to say I was haunted by my potential. And now I'm fully ready to achieve my potential. I think someone once called me like a penny stock, and now I'm ready to pay off. And thank you. And yeah, I'm sure you remember your quote. I was trying to find it exactly, but you said,
Yeah, just
I
just
get,
just that
yeah,
for my drinking career, I have drank and daydreamed 100,000 times about all the amazing things that I would do, but I never did them. I never did them because I was either drinking, planning drinking, recovering from drinking, or playing catch up from drinking, and it's a cycle. There's no room for anything else. Just the simple act of not drinking and getting out of that cycle has given me so much space. And within that space is growth. So I plan to I want to use every ounce of potential that I was lucky enough to get on this earth, man. I want it all gone when I die. And I got a lot of catching up to do, man, because I haven't used I haven't used much of it to this point because I was watering it down for all those years. But yeah, It is a freedom and a space for growth and a happiness that you couldn't have told me. I had to get to this point myself with the drinking, and it's amazing. It's like nothing I ever expected.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I love it, man. I heard someone say, she said, all this preoccupation with drinking. She goes, I'm so excited about what I'm going to do with my mind now that I'm not just preoccupied with drinking. I mean, that's a whole nother thing we could go on, man. Or you kind of just hit it. But the pre-planning, the planning, the execution, the afterwards, the whole thing, just endless.
Hamster wheel,
Endless.
man. Hamster wheel.
You know what?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, sadly, I do with coffee now. It's so funny. I have my hot coffee, then I have a backup cold one. I even brought it here. If I finish my hot one, I've got my cold one ready to go. My father asked me that. My father just shakes his head. He doesn't get it at all. He's on the Italian side. That, my mother's on the Irish side. He's on the Italian side. Doesn't get the disorder at all. And I show up. And I know this is common with our people, have, 3 drinks. I have a sparkling water bottle. I have a regular water bottle. Now I have a hot coffee and a cold coffee carafe, whatever the hell. I can't even think of the word for this thing.
Covered. I'm going to have to cut, you can edit this out, but I'm going to have to cut you off to get the kids again. We've gotten to that point because talking is so easy with you. But if this is interesting to your viewers and to you, man, it's fun to talk to you. But I have had a lot of people say, what was the catalyst? Like, why did you decide to quit? Because there had been a handful of times over 20 years that, I'd gotten in trouble and tried to quit, or a punitive reason, whatever. But where I really decided that I wanted to make a change, and it still took time to get there, people always talk about midlife crisis, age 50, right? So I have the benefit of age, maybe compared to some of your viewers, but I always thought that was bunk. I've always been laid back. My life was good, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm not going to there's no what is midlife crisis? That's for people that didn't live their life. I've lived my life. Really, I just drank my life. But I got to that age, man. And sure enough, my brain started spinning a little bit. And the spin was, what have you really accomplished? What have you really done on this? Who the hell are you, really? Who are you without booze? Like, I quietly had those thoughts even when I was actively drinking. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do more. I'm going to be more. I'm going to do this. So on the days that I didn't drink, I was working out every day. I was, doing better at my day job. I was working on projects. I was starting to do things that I was proud of, or trying to get proud of. But then I would drink and continue and just tear it all down. And then I'd start again and I'd tear it down, and I'd start again and I'd tear it down. And I got to the point in that phase of my life where I really felt, Cap, like I was starting to go crazy. I literally felt like it was like a split personality, because I wanted so badly to become the person that I knew I could. But then I would go right back to the same cycles and tear it all down. So I was growing, the drinking was getting worse because the growth was pulling against it. Like the days that I wouldn't drink, I was leaning towards the good life, and then the drinking would pull back that much harder. So it was just going, in my mind was going like this. And I really did. I was like, this is what it feels like to go crazy. And that's when I finally decided that the guy going this way has to win. Because if I go back this way, there's no coming back. I'll never become what I know I'm capable of if I go that way. So that was the catalyst. And it took a lot of back and forth, a lot of reframe, a lot of good friends like you, a lot of mistakes, a lot of day ones, but that was the catalyst. I turned 50 and I wanted to leave more on this earth than I have given it to this point, and do more for myself, which therefore is more for my kids, more for my wife, more for my community, more for my friends like you. I can finally be the good person that I want to be, but I couldn't do it with alcohol.
Yep. I love it, brother. And, I'm single, forever single. I blame somewhat the drinking on a lot of that. But so my mother is my, family that I am most inspired by, and said, she was very successful. She's on the drinking side, but she was always very successful career. And I want to really make something of myself. I had a pretty good sales career back in the day, but it got taken off track from the drinking. And I really want to make something of myself for her, to make her proud, etc. And she might even listen to this. She told me she doesn't listen to podcasts. I don't like those things in my ears. And I was like, come on, you kidding me? But today I was almost relieved though. And now she emailed me today and said, oh, I think I found some good I think she called them earbuds, which would be pretty progressive for her. But so she might actually be listening. So yes, mother, you're my inspiration. I was actually married once. Story for another day. And my mother-son song dance was "You're the Inspiration" by Chicago, old school tune there. But
Well,
great way to end it.
well, let me.
For this segment, dude, we definitely need a third because
This is gonna. We're doing this weekly. I think this is too much fun. I'll leave today with this because you just said something, and I literally just did a post that was similar to this topic as well, and it's so meaningful and it's hard. The reason I like Reframe and sharing any sober community where you get to share is because I get to put truths out there. I get to admit things that are freaking hard to admit, but once you do, it's easier. So you're talking about making your mom proud. In my opinion, the way that that's happening is because you're finally becoming proud of you. I looked okay from everybody on the outside looking in most of my life, really. Successful careers, military, family, all of that. But and people would see me and probably thought I was proud of my life and my things and of myself. The truth is, I wasn't. Inside was a mess with very low self-esteem. Very, very shameful because I've always known that this beast was on my shoulders. So one of the biggest things for me right now, and it's hard to admit, brother, but I want to say it out loud, is like at 52, I'm becoming proud of myself. And some people will say, well, that's a shame. Your whole life you haven't been proud. I mean, I guess I've done things that I'm proud. I'm proud of my kids, proud of some of the things that I've accomplished, I guess, but never really been proud of me. And it's hard to say that, but I'm starting to feel proud of myself. That way other people can be proud of me. So that's it.
Absolutely. We might pick up on that the next time because self-love is a big rewarding part of this process. And I've found the same thing. I've stolen the Whitney line that I found the greatest love of it all inside of me in sobriety.